各位来宾哈，还有Professor Anna Kindler 主任，早安。Single Chinese, so I speak in Chinese. And 这个春天啊，在上学期他在台湾待了3个月啊，来到我们国语中心学中文啊，所以他现在也会讲中文，听这种中文啊，然后顺便广告一下我们国语中心啊。那Anna她是UBC 就 University of British Columbia 的Vice Provost for Academic Affairs， 所以他是相当于我们的教务长啊。他在那边当行政工作也10几年啊，除了当教务长呢，还是他们 Provost 还有 President 的咨询顾问啊。那正好这1年半他是在 sabbatical 啊，在 sabbatical， 那所以我们就邀请他来我们师大呢当我们的 chair professor， 那也是当校长的校务顾问啊。那他对这个教发中心啊教学方面呢有相当的投入，那还有在做教学的升等、教学的互评啊这方面他都非常有深入的了解啊。那他这些我们特别请他教发中心特别请他过来1个礼拜呢，那也会谈到一些有关我们怎么做大学一些主管的一些训练啊。在明年他还会再来3个月来帮忙我们师大做一些校务的精进。那今天我们很高兴有这个机会来跟我们校内还有校外的一些学者我们共同分享他的经验。那我们是不是就请他开始演讲？
谢谢大家，谢谢大家来听我的演讲。对不起，现在我说了英文。Thank you again very much for being here, and I wanted to express very sincere thanks to Vice President Wu and to all of the colleagues here at the NTNU for the warm welcome that I have received this time, and which I have received every time when I have the amazing pleasure to join your community. So today I will try to share with you some reflections that are based on my experience as an academic at the University of British Columbia, which, as you know, is one of the very large, comprehensive universities that has, particularly over the recent couple decades, really ascended to the kind of category of universities that are reasonably well ranked and considered as among the influential, very well positioned universities in the world. Now, when I first joined the University of British Columbia in 1990, it was a very different institution than what it is today, and needless to say, a very different institution than at the time it was established exactly 100 years ago. This year is the UBC's 100-year anniversary. Now, true to its roots as a public, provincially funded university, we are not a private institution, we are funded by the province. UBC has had a very long legacy as a primarily teaching institution. And it's interesting to think about it because when I look at the roots of NTNU, again, it's an institution where teaching has been historically a very significant part of your university's mission. So, you know, in its early days of the University of British Columbia, while the pursuit of knowledge through scientific or scholarly inquiry has always been an important aspect of the raison d'être, or the reason for having a university in the province. The university was seeing itself and was seen by others primarily as a top provider of high-quality education for the new generation of British Columbians throughout the early decades of its existence. Okay, so this is what the university was really for. So as you can see on this slide, symbolically, teaching was really where most of our energy and our excellence was vested in, while research was something that we were concerned with as well. Now, fast forward to the time, just about the time when I was coming to the university. So just before that, UBC has already had, if you will, increased its ambitions, and its research profile has increased. The university continued to pride itself in high quality of its educational programs, but has expanded to include several professional and also graduate programs. So, as this sort of pedagogical repertoire has grown, the university also focused on nurturing of a growing number of faculty engaged in increasingly sophisticated forms of scientific or scholarly inquiry. Now, when I arrived in UBC, 1990, in the context of its rapidly increasing internationalization, something that was happening within the global academia, the well-established precedent of universities playing a key role in driving scientific discovery, which now the society has increasing expectations of, and facing an unprecedented before competition for talent, for faculty. It's a global marketplace, if you will, for human talent, and also a pressure for financial resources. UBC has already begun to shift its tack. Okay, so from this place where teaching and initially teaching and teaching and research became priorities. Now guess what? Research was becoming the new preoccupation. So under the leadership of a world-renowned NASA scientist, Dr. David Strangway, who was then the president of the University of British Columbia, UBC has redefined its ambitions to strive for a world-class performance and a world-class recognition as a research-intensive university. Now, consequently, research was in everybody's mind. Okay? It was no longer possible, for example, to compete for a tenure track position, for a professoriate type of position, without a PhD degree, right? Even with very significant record of outstanding pedagogical achievement. Some of my colleagues, including those whom I would consider absolutely master teachers, but who did not have PhDs, were being gently directed towards retirement to make room for freshly minted, PhDs and postdocs. As a beginning assistant professor at that time, it was clear to me where I should put my effort, energy, and when I talked to colleagues across campus, all of us were hearing exactly the same message. It is research that matters. Whatever we do, it really researches that matters. So while we were consistently encouraged to attend research seminars, to get our research plans, our research agendas, formulated as quickly and as promptly as possible, and to seek mentors to help us navigate the game of research, research grants, research publishing and all that, conversations about teaching became suddenly limited to the negotiations of how I can get out myself of teaching so I can devote more time to research. Okay. Within the very clearly defined culture of publish or perish as an academic, there was not much time anymore for learning about things like curriculum design, consideration of the impact of different pedagogies on students' learning across the disciplines, or for assessment of how what we do in a classroom contributes to or perhaps actually detracts from students' good, effective learning. In a sum, teaching became a chore in an otherwise fully consumed, or in an academic life otherwise fully consumed and focused on research. So, in many ways, this sharp emphasis on research has paid tremendous dividends to the university. At the turn of the 20th century, UBC has moved from a small, provincially oriented post-secondary institution with limited name recognition, even nationally, never mind internationally, to the tier of most influential, globally renowned universities. So over a very short period of time, the university's research output has increased several-fold, and so has the ability of UBC researchers to attract significant external research funding. The strategy to seek and recruit top talent and to retain, top world-class researchers has allowed Nobel Prize quality research to thrive within UBC. And perhaps, Michael Smith becoming a prime example of scholars whose groundbreaking contributions to knowledge creation have been effectively supported within this new orientation, within this ethos. So one may ask, so what's wrong with this picture? Is there anything wrong with this picture? Suddenly we have this university that, is noted globally, is doing well, research is thriving. Is there anything wrong? See, the answer to this question would come from several places, because there was actually something wrong with this picture. The answer would come from undergraduate students and their parents increasingly concerned about the quality of learning experience of the students. What is the value for the tuition money, the time, the effort spent there? Is this research-intensive university really helping, our children and helping us to learn? Comments such as, well, actually maybe you should go at least for the first year or second year somewhere else, in a place where they really can teach you something, and then try to transfer so you still get the degree from UBC because it has a good, market value. But in terms of what and how you learn, maybe UBC is actually not so good. This in itself is not a good thing for people to be saying about your university, but it becomes increasingly problematic in the context of a heating up competition, particularly for international students. As you know, right now, it's a global competition, and to put it very crudely, international students who not only bring, diversity and really enrich the makeup of a university community, they also bring money, right? So it is not just a kind of a philosophical question, but also a budgetary question. Can we afford not to be good at teaching? And the answer to us was becoming very quickly, probably not. Now, the answer to this question, is there anything wrong with this picture, also would be manifested in the rapidly growing class of a new sessional faculty. Okay? Those will be faculty members who will be hired to teach at the university, but without holding a real academic professorial appointment. It created a new category, if you will, or a subcategory of a lesser category of faculty, who not only would not feel as welcome and not feel as embedded, in the university culture and context, but their capacity to really contribute to the university would be limited. The answer to this question would be reflected in the polarization, increasing polarization within departments between faculty who cared enough about undergraduate student learning to make additional investments of time and intellect into those endeavors, and those wholly committed to research who would regard such attempts as perhaps a sign of scholarly weakness, or quite simply a waste of valuable time. Importantly, the answer would also be contributed through research. through research, the very thing that we now value, that demonstrated a spectacular failure of some of the traditional wisdom-driven teaching. And a good example of this would be a comprehensive study that was conducted by Carl Wyman, who, in terms of his standing as a researcher, you can hardly think of someone who's more distinguished. He actually won a Nobel Prize in physics, who came to UBC from the University of Colorado to lead a Carl Wyman Science Education Initiative. And in the context of this undertaking, he's done research both in Colorado and at UBC, looking at the experience of students in a first-year science, particularly physics courses. And one of the most alarming findings of this research was that when they compared students' understanding and students' ways of thinking about scientific phenomena and scientific concepts after they took first year of physics, their concepts and their ways of thinking about these phenomena were more different from the ways in which scientists think about those things than before they ever took the course. Students who got their good grades, but they were not getting the kinds of understanding that we want them to get from taking science courses. So there was now research evidence to say that the kind of teaching, the way in which we teach, something wrong here. Oh, it's much better. That the ways in which we teach have not been optimal, right? But I would argue that it was the cultural shift within the academia that led to the creation of a very harmful hierarchy within the professoriate, which in my view became the most significant sign of a failure of the system that neglected to effectively balance the research and the educational mission of the university. So consequently, in the early 2000s, and that's exactly the time when I joined the provost office, the university made a deliberate decision to start reinvesting in teaching. We have realized that although we've made lots of progress in certain areas, the university is lacking in some other ways. So we said, okay, well, we'll boost teaching and all will be happy, we'll live happily ever after. Only to find out that the legacy of the past commitment to education, and remember, we were a good teaching university, no? That this legacy, for all practical purposes, has been actually sacrificed at the altar of research culture. So even when our then president, Stephen Troop, supported by strong team in the provost office, became very outspoken about the importance of quality of undergraduate education at UBC. And the Board of Governors approved an unprecedented multi-million-dollar investment to fund things like Carl Wyman Science Education Initiative. There was still a widespread sense of doubt and disbelief among professoriate, among faculty members, and among students as well, that at this research-intensive university, teaching may matter again. Okay. So this was to some extent unintentionally reinforced, I suppose, by the fact that while renewing its interest in teaching, the university, of course, continued to actively pursue its ambitious research agenda. The last thing that we wanted to do is to say, well, now we're left teaching, but research is going to, stop being as good as, or not have the ability to improve in this area. So the university has been careful to ensure that the additional focus on teaching does not come at the expense of research performance. And we have put in place mechanisms to back this assertion. So here you have it symbolically represented as a pillar. We try to put the pillar to make sure that research is not going to go down while we're trying to lift the teaching. So how we've done that? So for example, initiatives dedicated to improvement in undergraduate education have been paired with new funding approaches to better support graduate student research. So we'll be doing some things on the teaching side, but we've also been trying to have initiatives that continue to bolster and boost research. When we were putting more resources and encouraged people to engage in flexible learning and use of technology in teaching and learning and so forth, were paralleled with significant investments into research infrastructure, the overhaul of research policies, and the extensions of research support services, including those related to grant development and management, as well as liaison and generally commercialization of knowledge to better support faculty in their scientific and scholarly inquiry. Now, this wise decision, and of course it was absolutely wise decision, to not allow research success to slip away, and to ensure that the capacity for further growth in research excellence continued to be firmly supported, made it perhaps at the same time a little difficult for some faculty or some colleagues to grasp that the picture is actually changing, that we are no longer just about research, although we are about research, right? That we really now have added another set of equally ambitious goals and prerogatives to build our future, this time also related to teaching. So, the process that I just described was a process where we tried to put the pillar under the research and then put the pillar, or as you will, a lever, to bring teaching up. Now, I can tell you from our experience, fast forward now a decade later, after investing countless dollars into many teaching and learning focused initiatives later, UBC is still continuing on its journey, has not completed its journey to become a university that could truly prize itself for being both research and teaching intensive. And this is what we want to do. To restore the focus, effectiveness, and value of teaching has proven to be much more challenging than what most of us have anticipated. The culture change that would position UBC as a global leader in effectively balancing the two mandates is actually quite slow to come about, and the committed enthusiasts dedicated to advancing this change continue to struggle against a hardcore opposition. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that we will eventually get there, if not by the power of intellectual persuasion and telling people, how it just makes sense to balance research and teaching a little more, then by the reality of financial constraints. The increasing public scrutiny of the university budgetary practices will not allow an institution primarily funded for teaching to continue to undervalue and underinvest in teaching within the climate of accountability. And with the increasing scrutiny of educational performance when global university ratings are compiled, you might have noted that, way back when the international university ratings were compiled, pretty much all of them really focused more on research. In recent years, there is a resurgence of interest in teaching in those ratings. And some actually put quite a bit of weight on it. So if you want to become or maintain your status as a world-leading university, being a research powerhouse is not enough. And to keep that standing, if your teaching is not good, you have to compensate quite a lot more on the research side. So it just doesn't make sense not to do it in a balanced way. However, this transition period required to recover what was lost on the teaching front at the time research excellence was nurtured. Remember that sort of picture was I was showing you that, that sort of from teaching we're now shifting this way to research. And to find a way in which the renewed and necessary emphasis on teaching would complement and boost rather than compete with and deflate the university's capacity to be a research powerhouse seems really, from my perspective, the way I lived it in my experience, a time of wasted opportunity and of a university suboptimal performance. In other words, what I mean by this is that, that we built something new that's excellent, but as we were doing it, we lost something that is now very difficult to get back. Very difficult, very costly, and requires a huge cultural adjustment. So, with the hindsight of this experience, and captured by the idea, by the possibility of a world-class balanced university. I'm talking world-class balanced university. I have been prompted to reflect on the possibility of achieving a satisfying homeostasis between excellence in research and excellence in teaching through perhaps a more thoughtful, more efficient process than what we have done in the past. So to clarify, when I talk about this homeostasis, within this model of a balanced university, I refer to the ability for the institution to maintain and continue to build excellence in teaching despite or alongside of the new pressures and prerogatives and needs that might be external or internally imposed related to other aspects of the university mandate, in this case, research. Okay? So how to maintain, if you will, the balance within the organisms when you are trying to build something new and not lose something that you've already had or have well positioned for the next level of excellence. Now, it seems to me that this reflection is particularly relevant at this time because many universities worldwide, and I understand NTNU is included in this group, have really found themselves at the crossroads or sort of at the place where, the tension between teaching and research becomes more and more prominent. And the question is, okay, so what do we do with it, Certainly it's possible to go the UBC way. And it's not that it doesn't come without rewards. But is there a better way? Is there a better way? Now, I have to admit, of course, that the trajectory of strategic, exclusive refocusing on research, full speed, and reshaping reward structures to support this exclusive orientation for that period of time certainly delivered on many of its promises in our experience. As I have said, it's not that it was a bad strategy from any point of view. However, is there a way that could mitigate these collateral losses that we have suffered, right? The losses on the side of teaching, and from which it will take us decades of a cultural change to recover. So I would argue that there is a need, there is indeed a way to develop a strong culture of research excellence without giving up on excellence in teaching. However, to do so requires a very different way of thinking or imagining the two priorities. You see, we've been at UBC, and I would argue in many places in the world, kind of intellectually stuck in the idea of a balance in this very traditional way. Like this traditional scale, as I showed on my first slide, where you have two arms. When something goes up, something has to go down. And the idea of balancing or reaching the equilibrium would bring both priorities to kind of a mediocre level, right? Now, when you try to do what we've tried to do, put the pillars, put the levers, and try to build those things up, well, what happens? Well, the whole thing breaks. Because that conceptual model, doesn't work. In a traditional scale, you can't keep, lifting both arms, right? The instrument, if you will, breaks down. So what I would argue is that we need to shift to a different way of thinking about the balance. And I try to show you a different metaphor, okay? Remember the traditional balance? Now I'm showing you a digital balance, right? Where you suddenly have the scales, right? Which are connected in a sense by the base of being funded on innovation, knowledge, technology, and so forth. But they also have certain level of independence, and you can measure and you can lift, two things at the same time. So it's a very different. I mean, of course, this is a metaphor. This is just a picture to help you, I guess, clarify what what I'm trying to say. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we need to think in different ways than what we've traditionally been thinking about the relationship between teaching and research. So keeping this metaphor in mind, this different kind of concept of balance, what would be required for a world-class balanced university to materialize? And again, I'm talking world-class. Remember that traditional balance, in my view, allowed for the mediocrity. We want to go up on both sides, right? And that's what the world-class excellence, how I kind of think about it. So I do not believe that a balanced university model can be achieved simply through a strong resolve and firm commitment not to neglect teaching while research prerogatives grow in importance. For us just to say, well, we are going to just continue to, to be good at teaching while we now do all of these additional more things, on the side of research. And this is because I believe that university structures, including the ways in which the professorial ranks have been traditionally configured and implemented, which have served us well for the centuries before. I don't think that they are compatible with this new way of thinking about a balanced university. Now, as I said, these structures have served universities well in the past, but I don't think they are compatible with the demands of the 21st century world and the ways in which excellence in research and excellence in education manifests itself or themselves in the 21st world. They are not compatible with the contemporary context of research discoveries and their dissemination happening at an unprecedented speed. When you think about how much research we used to generate, even 50 years ago, and how much research we generate right now with world-class universities, there's no comparison. They are not compatible with what we know about the nature of teaching and learning, which has now opened new possibilities for educational excellence that previously could have not been entertained. The information that comes from cognitive sciences, from educational research, that tells us that intuition and past practice hold certain limits to excellence, right? They are not compatible with the advances in research and learning technologies, which, as much as they have facilitated and assisted the academic enterprise in many ways, actually failed to deliver, I think, on their initial great promise of freeing human time. And remember when the computers first came on board and smartphones and all those things, so people were saying, "Oh, you're going to save so much time." Well, clearly, at least in my experience, the opposite has been the truth. If anything, they effectively added to the daily stress and overload, because now you also have pressures on immediate, very frequent communication and so on and so forth. The traditional university structures and modus operandi, in my view, are no longer compatible with the expectations of frequency and promptness of interpersonal professional communications that require historically unprecedented amounts of time to manage today. They are also not compatible with the globally declining public investment in universities. And I'm not sure if that's the case in Taiwan, but in North America, and also I hear it from colleagues in Europe, the percentage of funding for publicly funded universities has been declining at a dramatic rate. So universities have to find ways to do all of these things at the world-class level with actually less money that's coming to them from the public purse. So I think that a significant roadblock in achieving a world-class balanced university, a research-intensive university where teaching and learning thrive, also lies, in my view, in the habits of mind, in the ways in which different stakeholders within the university, the internal stakeholders, what I mean by that is our faculty members. I think you refer to this group as a teaching staff. You know, when I use the word faculty, I mean people who are in professorial appointments, who are academics who do research and teaching. Students and university leadership, university administration. So I was talking about this sort of roadblock to achieving the world-class university sometimes may relate to the habits of mind of these three different groups with respect to teaching and learning excellence. Specifically, I think this roadblock can be traced back to the common understandings of the respective roles and responsibilities for driving educational success. Now, I have spent a considerable amount of time in my life in all three of these positions. I spent many years as a student, and in fact I can tell you that recently, taking advantage of my sabbatical, I actually enrolled in an undergraduate course at UBC to experience the life of a student again. And of course I've been a faculty member for all of my professional life, and I spent 13 years in senior university administration. So I've really had a chance to gain insights into the particularities of these different perspectives and how people in these different positions think about who is responsible for excellence in teaching and learning at the university. So let me comment on it. So let's start with the perspective of academic leaders. So from the position of university leadership, I can just tell you from my experience in this role, there certainly is an expectation of both faculty, the professoriate, and the students' compliance with the directives that have been set forth by the leadership team and the relevant governing bodies. In our case it might be a board of the governors or the academic senate and so forth, designed to ensure educational excellence. Now, significant time and effort is often invested in developing such policies and directives. And once they are approved, hopefully following some reasonable process of consultation and consideration of relevant evidence and best practice that can be brought forth. And when these policies are being pushed down to the level of implementation, from the leadership or from the administration perspective, it is the compliance of the faculty and student that is seen as critically instrumental to the potential success. Okay? Similarly, if there is no such compliance, it is very easy to conclude that any failure is because either the faculty or students have not done what they were supposed to do. Now, from this perspective, it is really up to the faculty members to deliver on the teaching agenda of the university. And thus the onus and responsibility for having the university reach aspirations of the teaching intensiveness or teaching excellence is squarely vested within the professoriate. From the leadership vantage point of view then, there is consequently, in order to ensure progress, there is a need to systematically measure and assess faculty performance, right? I mean, it all makes sense. So to sum up from this leadership perspective, if only the faculty members would stand up to the occasion and perform as expected, educational excellence of the university would be assured. Okay? So, it's the faculty who are really responsible in the end of the day, of course the students to some extent as well, for educational excellence. Now, From the perspective of the faculty members, you know, those who teach and who do research at the university, however, it is frequently the very policy framework that the university sets up for community, implementation schedules, reward structures that may drive or detract from their successful contributions to teaching. Such frameworks may be seen by faculty members as maybe misguided, or maybe too prescriptive, or outright unreasonable, you know, with respect particularly to the time and energy that they think they reasonably can devote to teaching. It may be sometimes the climate within the faculty or the college or department that is seen by the professoriate as a significant facilitator or perhaps a barrier to success. It may also, you know, I've heard it from faculty members, and I had these thoughts myself as well. It may be the quality of graduate and undergraduate students that we as faculty members would believe that may be a determinant of faculty accomplishment in teaching. And it may be the very pressure of the expectations of a world-class research performance and the ways in which research-intensive university typically reward less excellence in teaching than excellence in research, that may be seen by faculty members as demotivating factors, eventually leading to a less than optimal teaching performance. So to sum up that perspective, if only the university, meaning the leadership and administration, and the students adequately invested in and tangibly valued and supported teaching and learning, universities would excel in their educational mission. Okay? So now let's turn to the students. They may have yet another position on the issue. Students are often attracted to come to study at the research-intensive university, and we've done some surveys on that, based on the institutional brand name recognition. Okay. And the implied promise of a superior, more comprehensive learning experience in the active, inquiry-rich educational setting. Yet, when they arrive at the university, such as UBC, and you know, I already mentioned this earlier, the students frequently would find themselves attending classes in which they remain anonymous to their professors. They note that faculty members sometimes seem to be much more preoccupied with their research than with teaching responsibilities. They find assessment practices useless for them, other than for administrative grading purposes, because they often fail to provide timely feedback that would support student learning. They are puzzled sometimes why curricula and pedagogies often reflect convenient perpetuation of old models, you know, and all the kind of templates, without embracing the full realm of current possibilities of their advancement. They are asking, you know, why is it so? If you guys know that you can do better, why you are not doing it? So as students assess this reality, it is both the faculty members in the classroom as individuals and the university as a whole that may be seen as underserving or even failing them. So from the student's perspective, if only the faculty members took their teaching responsibilities as seriously and as diligently as they approach research, and the university set up its priorities right and rewarded teaching as much as they reward research, students would be fully satisfied. So I would argue that, you know, while these perspectives are not incongruent or mutually kind of exclusive, they tend to place the onus or the responsibility for excellence in educational enterprise outside of the group that is making the assessment. Okay? So it's always someone else that holds the key to this excellence. Now these perceptions, you know, allow little room for effectively seeing excellence in teaching and learning as a systems issue, where pieces are very closely interconnected, and where success depends more on a perfect confluence and synergy in the effort of many than on anyone in particular making a singular meaningful contribution, right? So it's what really matters more is how these different contributions come together than if only one party makes a very important contribution to success. So if we were to embrace this concept of a world-class balanced university that I'm so excited about, how would the roles and responsibilities for educational excellence of university leaders, faculty and students be defined? So let me start with the university leadership, because I've been in this position, for the past 13 years or so, and I can perhaps comment on the complexity of this sort of vantage point and the challenges that university leaders face. Now, having said, as I have said, served in the university senior administration for a number of years, I am well aware of the cultural phenomenon of polarization mentioned earlier in this presentation between the various stakeholders. You see, the reality is that academic leaders and their lives are often, in very tangible ways, filled to the brim. When I kind of put on my faculty member's hat, and I kind of to remember before I joined the university leadership, what did I think about university leaders? I often thought of them as, people who just do some things out there, who probably don't care enough about me, and who probably don't get actually quite well what I do. I never thought of the magnitude of tasks that these people actually have to juggle. Now the reality is that the weight of diverse demands on the academic leaders is actually quite tremendous. I can now say this from my own experience. The demands relating to strategic planning, to policy development, to administrative decision making, to guidance in implementation of major initiatives and programs, stewardship of university resources, meeting government reporting requirements, external communications, and many, many other tasks. In reality, create pressures that makes it sometimes really easy. And I'm speaking from experience. I'm guilty of it. To see challenges of others, the challenges, the struggles that faculty members have, as perhaps less significant. It is even more so as many academic leaders continue to dream about their scholarly careers, attending to which we scarcely have time. So, so I'm just trying to describe that kind of mindset that, you suddenly end up, you've been an academic, you end up being an academic leader. You have all of these demands and pressures that keep you awake day and night. And you still want to be that researcher, you still want to be that academic. Well, guess what, you hardly have any time to do. So, you are under all this pressure, which makes it conducive for you to think about others in very particular ways. Now, this phenomenon of seeing faculty members as others can easily be fueled by what in the world of administration, at least at UBC, is sometimes referred to as difficult faculty or difficult students. Okay? Those are the individuals whose problems appear to be relatively trivial. Again, keep in mind from this perspective of an overload, right? But which consume inordinate amounts of time to resolve. Or which seem to be outside of the realm of the possibility to be satisfactorily resolved. Colleagues or students who come with problems which, quite frankly, are impossible to solve because the demands or the challenges that they raise are outside of the realm of what can be reasonably addressed. Now, in fairness, so now I'm kind of painting this picture of the terrible administrative leaders who don't care, who are, removed from the reality of people and who see others as troublemakers. But I think in fairness, you have to reckon that this divisiveness of this polarity is also fueled by the ways in which academic leaders are often treated by the faculty as others. I remember the day when I joined the senior administration. I stopped being us, I became them. There was a change in relationship, changing ways in which my peers would consider me, because now I'm a university leader, so I must have some strange agenda. There is a level of polarity that feeds itself, which is really, really not good. Now, within this polarized mindset, and this is one of the things that I wanted to bring forward, because it's not to say that it's anybody's fault, but that's the reality of it, is that within this polarized mindset, it is easy to overlook or sometimes even discount symptoms of a possible systemic dysfunction, which is not a personal dysfunction, it's a systemic dysfunction, that may be hidden behind a seemingly trivial complaint, and assume that it should be entirely up to faculty to find the mechanism to cope with the difficulties that they have brought to light. Now, I'll give you a concrete example. So, now, in a traditional university, right, the university as we know it, faculty members have increasingly been struggling, at least in North America, with the mounting academic workload. While standards of teaching, or standard teaching responsibilities, how many classes you need to teach, have remained pretty stable within North America over the previous decades. What has changed is that the excellence in teaching requires now much more than an individual stellar performance in front of the students in a typical stand and deliver model of instruction. Okay? So even if we think only with respect to teaching, never mind all of the other things that now faculty members need to do, what defines excellence in teaching is much more than what it used to be even at the time when I came to the academy in the 1990s. Okay? What would have been excellent performance now, it's an average performance today. So here what you see on this slide are some examples of the kinds of things that excellence in teaching begins to require, that perhaps it was not so much on the agenda before. Let's just pick a couple of things. For instance, I remember when I started teaching in art education, I was responsible for art education content. Nobody expected of me to do anything in my class that would tap onto the competencies or learning outcomes of graduates of the University of British Columbia that speak to their communication skills, for example. That was something I never had to worry about, right? And yet today, because we think about excellence in teaching and learning in very different ways, what I do in an art education classroom as a professor, if I want to strive for excellence, has to relate to not just art education learning outcomes, but broader learning outcomes of the students, right? So I have to think about how even within an art education course, students can be learning those other important skills that would make them more employable, skills that perhaps would support their professional success, and so forth, right? So it's a very different mindset. So here, I'm not going to go into detail, but I just want you to take a moment to have a look at some examples. And the dots at the bottom, it's not an all-exclusive, inclusive list. There are many more things, but some examples of things that in the past, to be excellent, we didn't need to worry about, but now we do. And as I have said, this is not all that we need to worry about, because a similar list can be constructed for now all of the new obligations related to research. And again, the world of research has changed very much. The amount of time now, for example, that at least in North America we have to spend on grant writing. Okay? In the past, you wrote a grant, your chances of having it funded was, 60, 70, 80%, if you were good at it, I used to be getting pretty much every grant that I wrote, because, you learn the game and, and you get the money into your research. Well, now, because the funding for research is much more competitive, even top researchers have to write many more applications to get the same amount of money. So, you know, the time and effort that is required, again, for the excellence, the bar has gone up. And again, you see the list here of things that add to the workload of a faculty member. So, not surprisingly, faculty members have been complaining and have been raising the issue of you know, overload and stress, and basically saying, you know, how can we continue to be world class in all of those things that you want us to do? You know, is this even a realistic expectation? And I would say that, you know, it's not just my observation, having been immersed in the academic life, you know, for so many decades now in the academic life, that I would say, well, you know, we really have now quantitatively and qualitatively higher expectations. But unfortunately, there is a strong research evidence pointing out that academics are joining the ranks of you know, professions and occupations where the incidence of depression, mental illness,